the cloud, and I'm still letting some people in, but again, welcome. We've had some more people join since all that. Now, my name is Mary, so I'm the health educator here at Arthritis New South Wales, so located in Sydney. You'll see my face quite a bit in these webinars as I'm the primary person delivering these, so I'm the one who hears the feedback. I want to hear from you guys what you think of these webinars, what you want to learn about. I'm usually the one who's at the end of the info line answering all the questions you have about your condition as well. So hopefully we're putting a face to the name now. So just a little bit of background on myself. I have a background in nutrition and public health. I've been with the organisation for a little bit now. And yeah, I love educating on health topics. And this is kind of like where I'm a bit biased. I love talking about nutrition and food and diet. So again, feel free to engage and connect with me, ask lots of questions. I'm super excited for this webinar program we have coming up. As you would see this year, we have a whole bunch of topics that we're actually covering. So feel free to go through the list of upcoming webinars. Feel free to register for those. You might notice that I disappear for a little bit, and that's just because I've got a little baby on the way. So she'll be coming in June. So you might see a few months where I'm not around, but I will be coming back to jump in around September, October. So just let me know if everything sounds okay, everything looks okay on the screen. If there's any kind of issues, don't hesitate to raise them with me. You'll see in the taskbar, the Zoom taskbar, you'll see a chat box. I would love for you guys to use that for all your questions. If you have any comments, if you want to participate in any discussion, please feel free to use that chat box. As we go through this, I will please ask you guys to turn your microphones on mute, just because sometimes we get a bit of feedback that comes through and it can be a little bit disruptive and cause the sound to mess up for some people. So I actually just had a good question. Are these webinars the same as on Arthritis Queensland website? They are. So we pretty much come together with the Arthritis Queensland team, and that's why you'll either see me or sometimes Brianna Jones, who delivers some of these webinars, but we're across both organisations. So as I said before, nutrition is an exciting topic. I love talking about it. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking a little bit about the research that exists so far. So we'll start off with covering a little bit about what's in the guidelines in terms of osteoarthritis management in the context of nutrition. And then we'll dive a little bit deeper into that inflammation-diet connection, because I'm sure that you might have heard about it. You probably just want to understand a little bit more about it. And then at the end, we'll go through some tips, give you some tricks to help improve your nutrition if this is something you really want to work on. And I can assume if you're here tonight that it is probably something that's playing on your mind and you're ready to be motivated. So just a little disclaimer that all our presentations contain really general information and advice. So we do our due diligence to make sure that all the information we present is based on the latest evidence. It's accurate, it's reliable. If you do have questions that relate to your individual treatment advice or medications or your condition, sometimes I'll direct you and ask you to bring that up with your doctor or your primary healthcare physician. But I'll do my best to answer any questions as they relate to our session tonight. So just while I'm letting some people in, I want to hear from you guys. What do you know about the arthritis, and the diet?
Not very much.
Not very much. Okay.
Very little.
Very little.
All I know about you shouldn't eat tomatoes. I don't know if that's still applicable.
Okay, interesting you bring that up.
I've heard that you shouldn't eat nightshade plants.
Okay, the nightshades is an interesting one, and it comes up a lot of the times, actually. I don't know where that evolved from, but we will come back to that if it's still a question that's on your mind at the end of this webinar. Keep in mind, we have another 3 webinars after tonight that cover more things about nutrition, somewhere we might actually talk about nightshades.
Sugar and
Okay.
alcohol,
Sugar and alcohol, what do we know about that?
moderation or no sugar, little sugar, very little sugar.
Okay, let's jump into it. So nutrition, of course, plays an incredibly important role in terms of why someone might develop disease, but also why it could continue to get worse. And so if we look at some of the reasons someone can get osteoarthritis, we know that mechanics play an important role. So excess load, we know, can affect structural integrity of certain joints, particularly in those load-bearing ones, the knees, the hips, sometimes the feet. And that links in with carrying excess weight. But then there's also an inflammatory component that we're starting to learn about. So we understand it really clearly from a mechanical perspective, but what we're starting to learn more about is that there is an inflammatory component. And so there might be certain factors in the diet that can either dial up that inflammation or reduce it. So the thing about osteoarthritis is that it is a disease of the whole joint. So when I say that, it's not a condition that just affects the cartilage like we once believed. Joint is made up of bone, cartilage, ligaments, muscle, and different tissues. So when we break down what makes up these tissues and the structures, they're actually mostly dietary factors, all which play into how the joint is made up, how healthy it is, or vice versa, how much the joint can be impacted. And I will just pause quickly because I can hear some feedback coming through. Would it be okay to make sure that those microphones are off? And then I'll tell you when to switch them back on so we can have some discussion. So continuing back to my chat about the joint, we know bone and cartilage are mostly calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K, you have minerals thrown in there. We have protein that makes up the muscle that actually surrounds the joint. And then we also have inflammatory substances and hormones that can be influenced by how much sugar we eat, how much trans fats we consume, how much hydrogenated oils are in the diet. So there's all these things that can actually influence that inflammatory response in the body. So what we know from the best current data is that osteoarthritis isn't just caused by not exercising enough, carrying excess weight, lacking certain nutritional factors like vitamin D, calcium, vitamin K. It can actually be compounded by these factors. So it may have a role in worsening the state of that condition. So when we dive really deep into things like risk factors, what's important to realize is that a lot of them are actually modifiable. And what we mean by that is that they can be controlled and addressed through things like exercise and diet. And so I'm sure all of us at some point have been told that we need to work on getting our vitamin D levels up and we need to get those calcium levels up for bone health. But there's other nutritional risk factors that we don't always talk about that can actually influence inflammatory processes in the body, like high cholesterol, high blood sugar levels, high blood pressure. And so when we think about those things, we often just jump straight into, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. We don't always talk about their potential role in arthritis. So research is suggesting things like excess fat tissue can produce inflammatory hormones, which can basically accelerate that breakdown of particular structures in the joint. High blood sugar levels and cholesterol might have a negative effect on bone mineral density and affect that bone health. And then you have muscles that actually need sufficient protein to maintain their mass and their strength around joints to make sure that that force isn't, stressing out those joints. So what I'm getting at here is that the pathology of osteoarthritis is really complex. So is the pathology for rheumatoid arthritis. But we're starting to kind of gather more research around how modifying certain things in the diet can lead to lower and fewer side effects of osteoarthritis and disease activity and inflammatory attacks and all that. So there is no diet proven to cure arthritis. A question we get all the time is, what can I eat to fix my arthritis? We can't actually answer that with a blanket answer, but we do know that improving nutrition can really help with that symptom relief from both a weight management perspective and from a dietary perspective when we talk about things like active ingredients. Did I get someone coming through that microphone?
Yes, that's me. It's Jane Boyd. I haven't been able to hear a word since it began. I think I can hear you now. I had my volume full up high, and but I couldn't hear the lady speaking, and I've tried everything, but I can hear you speaking now. I don't know if I can hear the actual meeting though.
Okay, that's interesting. Is anyone else having those same issues?
I'm just on my mobile phone. No issues here.
Okay.
And maybe
no
just was
Jane, I can assume it might be a tech error. Just to know that if anything happens midway through this presentation, it is being recorded, so it will be uploaded to our website. And if you want to come back and watch what we just covered in that first half, you can always do that.
Yeah. How long does this go for?
Give it maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks,
so it'll be recorded on the website.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll just encourage everyone to turn their microphones off, and we'll continue on with the session. So what we're looking at here are the Royal Australian College of General Practitioner clinical guidelines. So this is pretty much what informs the management for osteoarthritis and the recommendations that are given to you. So from a weight management perspective, we know diet can have a huge impact on weight and load. And so we have a lot of data that actually suggests carrying excess weight can absolutely worsen symptoms, and that something like weight loss in someone who is currently overweight, so passing that BMI, that body mass index of 25, can make a really meaningful difference to pain symptoms. From a dietary perspective, we know certain nutritional factors like vitamins, micronutrients, antioxidants are essential for things like maintaining bone health, maintaining muscle mass and inflammation, all the things which could help not only with maintaining kind of those structures in the joint, but also helping with pain relief and pain symptoms. And that's where we're going to hone in on the research shortly. So you'll see here that weight loss, again, for people with a body mass index over 25 is known to have a really positive effect on osteoarthritis management. If you don't know what your body mass index is, you can always check that with a GP, or you can jump onto the Heart Foundation website and they have a BMI calculator. It's very good to know where that stands. You'll see that weight loss exercise is a great intervention. The only reason it's a conditional recommendation is because there is some level of personalization required in that intervention. And what I want to drive your attention to here is that you can see a conditional recommendation against things like omega-3 fatty acids being supplements and vitamin D supplementation. This isn't because it's not an effective intervention. It's just because the research isn't quite there yet to say that this works for this condition or this doesn't work for this condition. It's kind of very convoluted at the moment. And so this is why we do what we do. We share with you the information so you can make your own informed decisions about which way you want to go with your treatment. But nutrition research, it's really complex. We know diet can have a really big impact on health, but understanding how exactly diets, food choices, behaviors affect health exactly, it's quite tricky. So when researchers say that certain foods and diets are linked to health conditions, doesn't necessarily mean that this food directly causes this disease. It's just more like observing that this disease or this health condition seems to appear a lot in people who have regular intakes of this food or this type of dietary pattern. So it's really hard to kind of prove a cause and effect relationship. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. If I lose
Pardon
anyone,
me, I'm sorry to interrupt.
feel free. Yeah.
Shouldn't you take vitamin D? Because I'm on vitamin D.
We're going to hold on to that thought because we're coming up to vitamin D shortly.
All right, sorry. Jumping
Stay
the
with
gun.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess going back to the context of arthritis, which is what we all want to know about here, we have evidence suggesting that what we eat might be connected to the risk of developing arthritis or it progressing, but it also might be able to help improve the condition, but it also might not. So it's kind of, up to us to take that information, take that evidence and look at, how appropriate it is for our individual situations. And this is why we have people like GPs and physios that ask these questions too. And so going to the diet, a question that comes in a lot, do certain foods make a difference to inflammation? And the simple answer is yes. So there are foods that can lead to increased inflammation, like we know that there are foods that are more processed, they're higher in trans fats, saturated fats, added sugars. They also lack in fiber and have a number of different pro-inflammatory effects in the body. And this is due to how they affect things like the gut microbiome, how they affect the regulation of the immune system. We're starting to learn more about how these components affect inflammation in the joints. But it's also not just about what foods, but how much food we eat that can make a difference to inflammation as well. And this is why we talk about the importance of portion size control. There are some foods, particularly if they're eaten in excess amounts and over a period of time, that can contribute to weight gain. And fast food is one of the best examples we have of this, because often this type of food, it contains a lot of energy, but very little nutrients. And so it does have that effect to induce weight gain. On the contrary, we have foods that are known to contain anti-inflammatory properties. So we have fatty fish, we have krill, flaxseed oil, avocado, foods with very powerful omega-3 properties. We have foods like eggs, mushrooms, milk that are rich in vitamin D, but then we also have supplements when we can't quite get those nutrients from food. And there are so many other foods that can deliver these benefits as well. And this is why we hear a lot of hype around plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, herbs, whole grains, legumes. It's because of how they can impact health, and we actually have data on that. So what does the evidence say? Saturated fat, which is often found in animal-based foods, tropical oils, processed foods, very abundant in our Western diets, has been linked with increased cartilage damage in people with osteoarthritis. So we're going to look at the research that was done to kind of establish that. There's other evidence that suggests that omega-3s, often found in those foods like fish, nuts, seeds, supplements, have modulatory effects on rheumatoid arthritis, meaning they could interfere with the immune system to help reduce inflammation. And then we also have that weight management component. So in the Australian Dietary Guidelines, we have grade A evidence. We have the best level of evidence that exists to suggest that overconsumption of food increases adipose tissue, which is just technical for fat tissue. We also have that having a diet high in fat can influence energy intake, meaning that it contains a lot of calories, which can impinge on weight management. There's also grade A evidence to tell us there's a positive relationship between portion size and body weight. So things that are becoming more and more important risk factors to address in osteoarthritis because of the widespread effects excess weight has on both biomechanics of the joints and the inflammatory processes that are implicated in not just osteoarthritis, but rheumatoid arthritis as well. So we know that excess weight can place a lot of stress on the knee and hip joints. But what's really interesting here is that there is a relationship between excess weight and hand arthritis. So why this is interesting? Because we can't really have mechanical stress on the hands due to excess weight. And so we can't have really symptoms that come on from excess load because our hands don't really carry the excess weight. So this is what's telling us that there could be many metabolic factors involved due to circulating inflammatory molecules in the context of someone carrying excess weight. So from a dietary perspective, this is why saturated fat specifically has been a real strong area of interest, particularly with its devious role in arthritis. So very recently, there's been studies conducted by researchers that have looked at the effects of a high-fat, high-carbohydrate diet on the joints and overall health in rats. We know that rats are very different to humans, but what's relevant here is that it's a dietary pattern that's very common to our Western diets here in Australia. So because there is really clear evidence that saturated fats and simple carbohydrates are abundant in this dietary pattern, and they're known to contribute to a pro-inflammatory state in the body through several mechanisms, in theory, these dietary components might have a role in mounting an immune response that contributes to the prolonged breakdown and weakening of those tissues we talked about in the joints before, particularly in the cartilage. So that's really interesting to us. And we have experimental research that has looked at the impacts of a diet containing not just simple carbohydrates, but 20% saturated fats on osteoarthritis, with results confirming that this may have been responsible for producing the osteoarthritic-like changes that were observed in the knees of these rats. So they found that the rats who had this diet with a lot of saturated fat experienced weakening of the cartilage, which made it a lot more prone to damage. And so these findings, why they were interesting, is that they suggested that one, osteoarthritis was a result of more going on in the metabolism, as opposed to just that wear and tear we once believed about arthritis. And two, that diet has a lot to do with these changes. If we look at another study that investigated a very similar relationship, it looked at 2,100 participants over a time period of 4 years to confirm if there was a dose-response relationship between saturated fat intake and joint space width loss in the knee. So what they did is they looked at how many calories were coming in the diet from saturated fats. And they found that the group of people who were consuming the highest amount of saturated fats had greater changes in the X-rays that actually showed radiographic progression of osteoarthritis. So they were able to confirm that individuals who had diets high in saturated fats had a 60% greater risk for osteoarthritis progression. So not only were these weight changes observed as well, but altered joint loading. So just to summarize this really quickly, results of this study basically complemented that previous study we showed you with the rats and suggested that diet containing high amounts of saturated fats could be a risk factor and worth addressing, and makes sense as to why it could possibly help. So I know that it's all well and good to be told, like, this is a research, this is what could be contributing to osteoarthritis progression, but we probably want to know where saturated fats are found and how do we reduce them. So animal products for one, so fatty cuts of meat, poultry with skin, processed meats, full-fat dairy products, tropical oils, particularly those palm oils, palm kernel oil, and processed and packaged food. So think of those commercially baked goods, the cakes, the cookies, the crackers, snack foods, fried foods, fast food. So these are the foods that have been associated with not just, potential risk of osteoarthritis progression, but they're implicated in many, many health issues. So, of course, it can be part of a balanced diet, which is why we talk a lot about moderation and watching our consumption of these foods, but place more emphasis on what to bring in. So we'll come back to that. So when it comes to active ingredients and the role of nutrients, this is where a lot of interest seems to be. So I don't want to make it too complex for everyone, but I do want to highlight why there is certain hype about certain nutrients. So we'll start with the omega-3 fatty acids because these get a lot of attention in osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And there's also really clear evidence of its anti-inflammatory benefits. So omega-3s are found in your foods like fish, flaxseed, I mentioned them before, but walnuts, avocados. They're also found in your dietary supplements like fish oil. So they're known to have very powerful but very specific immune-mediated mechanisms of actions. To put that simply, thanks to their EPA and DHA contents, they're able to basically promote the resolution of inflammation in the body, help dampen that inflammatory response. And this relates to its effects in being able to help reduce inflammatory markers in the body that are often elevated in people with osteoarthritic joints, rheumatoid arthritis, and they may be implicated in pain and cartilage loss in certain types of arthritis. So there've been many, many studies that have looked at how effective omega-3s are, all which have drawn very inconsistent conclusions. But I want to focus on the one piece of research that's been really promising to us. So very recently, we had research to the level of a meta-analysis, which is basically the creme de la creme of research. It's a fantastic, very rigorous process in studying something. And it involved 9 randomized controlled trials with the involvement of 2,070 adults with osteoarthritis. So these studies all aimed to comprehensively evaluate the influence of your omega-3s on symptom and joint function in patients with osteoarthritis. And the results are really promising, with an overall benefit seen in both pain and function. I do need to highlight that this research was based on supplementation as opposed to food, but the results still complement the research that exists on the benefits of increasing things like fish in the diet, increasing nuts and seeds due to their omega-3 contents. So it's generally recommended to obtain omega-3 fatty acids from food anyway. We always say that supplements are meant to supplement what's missing in the diet. And this is because foods contain many other beneficial nutrients like proteins, other vitamins, other minerals that are essential for good health. And what we should probably go back and revisit is that, do you guys remember when I showed you the clinical guidelines, how there was a recommendation, a conditional recommendation against these supplements? This is really because the evidence for most is quite minimal. So we don't have a lot of good quality human clinical trials to show that, yes, this food is inflammatory, or this food is anti-inflammatory, or this dietary supplement does this exactly. But there are observations that have been made, and there is a building evidence base. And this is what we're looking at here, is that this piece of evidence we've pulled out here has good effects on symptom management. So going back, reminding us that because research isn't quite there yet, we don't really know how much of these food sources we should be eating to get that therapeutic benefit from these foods. But we have enough general evidence to suggest that in order to get the health benefits from omega-3s, 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week is sufficient. Of course, not everyone likes fish. Not everyone has access to fish either, especially if you're probably in a rural, remote area where the ocean isn't far. Maybe you have access to frozen fish. We also know that sardines, anchovies, probably not to everyone's taste. So before taking any supplement, of course, you should consult with your doctor or talk with a pharmacist so they can do their due diligence to make sure there's no interactions, it's safe for you to take, they can talk about appropriate dosage with you. But of course, if you can't get those food sources in the diet, that's where a supplement might be beneficial. It's just always important to talk about that with a professional, especially someone who knows your medical history and what medications you're taking. So just very quickly, the bottom line is that omega-3s can be really great for our health, should be part of a well-balanced diet. They might help with improving inflammatory pain and improving function. We need more evidence to say, but there's no harm in, speaking about it with your doctor. So we'll talk about the next best thing here is protein. So when we think about our muscles and the way they support our joints, it's really essential to try and maintain or build that muscle mass to help dissipate the forces on a joint like the knees or the hips. So when it comes to supporting our physiology and supporting that muscle mass, we need protein to help make that up and maintain its integrity. So we need protein for all our cells to grow, repair, heal, function. It's really a key ingredient for not only building muscles, but preventing that muscle loss, which becomes more and more important as we get older. So when our protein requirements aren't being met, this can affect muscle breakdown. And how that affects our arthritis is that the less muscle we have available around our joints, particularly those knees and in the hips, the more load and the more force they're going to have to bear. So this is why if you're exercising, we need that protein coming in to help make that muscle available, and make sure that protein intake is adequate. And this is where it can be really beneficial to speak with the dietitian, someone who can assess what you're eating or what you need to be eating. Usually, if your diet is balanced and you're getting enough of all 5 food groups, you might be meeting your recommended protein intake. But if you're not sure, it's always really beneficial to actually talk to someone about your diet. And so if you're wondering where we get our protein from, things like lean cuts of meat, you can get it from yogurt, you can get it from cheeses, tofu. There's lots of alternative sources if you don't eat animal products, if you're vegetarian or vegan. So there's a lot of different ways you can meet those protein requirements with healthy sources as well. So just antioxidants now. These have received a lot of attention. So vitamin C being particularly relevant owing to its requirement for collagen formation. Collagen is one of those structural components we see a lot of in the joint. Vitamin E, on the other hand, is said to be protective by reducing activity of free radicals. If you're wondering what a free radical is, you're not alone, but these are pretty much the substances which are said to be responsible for causing lots of stress and functional damage in lots of tissues. So there's a lot of claims that have been made that suggest they might be able to provide symptomatic relief and might be able to protect various cells and tissues in the body. And so what I want to go back to is the theory here. So oxidative stress is one of those proposed mechanisms that underpin joint and bone degeneration in all kinds of arthritis. So oxidative stress basically occurs when there's too many free radicals that are circulating in the body and are said to maybe trigger inflammation in arthritis. They're usually created in part of the inflammatory response. So again, they're known to damage different cells and tissues in the body, including those cells in the bone, cells in the cartilage, tendons, ligaments. And this is where antioxidants have become a growing area of interest. Not only are they able to help calm an inflammatory response, but provide that protection. So we're not saying that they can actually reverse structural damage in osteoarthritis, but they might offer potential benefits. So what you're seeing here, I'm not going to cut to the core of all these studies and I'm not going to make it too complex, but vitamin C is one of the most potent antioxidants, which has been studied a lot, particularly in the context of osteoarthritis management. So this is why vitamin C gets a lot of hype. What I want to highlight is that out of 12 human trials, only 2 studies focused on vitamin C coming in through food intake as opposed to vitamin C supplementation. And what they found in these studies that there was notable reductions in pain scores that were assessed in people eating lots of vitamin C. That other studies looked at improved quality of life, and occasionally there was a reduction or decreased use of painkillers. So what this tells us is that it could be a good area to look more into. At present, we don't really have that data to show you there's a direct benefit from this supplementation, but if you plan on increasing your intakes of foods with vitamin C's, what those foods are, we're looking at berries, spices, herbs, vegetables, eggs, tomatoes, kales. Antioxidants can be found in a variety of foods, particularly those plant-based foods. And incorporating a diet rich in these are always going to be great for our health, but we do need more research to look at potential links between circulating antioxidants taken from the diet and how well they actually work to protect against oxidative stress. So addressing that oxidative stress and might help with inflammation associated with different types of arthritis, but again, we always need to put that disclaimer out there saying we need to do more to understand this. So continue eating plenty of veg, plenty of fruit, nuts, seeds, fish, herbs, spices. They contain a lot of those essential nutrients that are not only going to support good health, but those joints as well. So as you may know, we have this question come in before about vitamin D. And we should know that it's very important for bone health. It plays a really important role for absorbing calcium and other minerals that are essential for supporting that healthy bone. Lack of vitamin D is what we know to be a strong risk factor for bone loss, which can lead to weakened and vulnerable bones. So can result in bone pain, can result in muscle weakness, and increased risk of falls and fractures. So why this is relevant is because, again, osteoarthritis, it does have a component where it affects the bone. So I hope it makes sense as to why we should be thinking about that bone health in arthritis as well. So in 2014, which I know was a while ago, but the research was still quite relevant. they looked at vitamin D levels in people with or at risk of osteoarthritis. One study they published in the Journal of Nutrition discovered that those with low vitamin D levels had more than double the risk of knee osteoarthritis progression compared to those with high levels of vitamin D concentrations. There was another one that complemented that, and they found that older adults who have vitamin D deficiency were more likely to experience new or worsening knee pain over the course of 5 years. So while correcting those vitamin D levels could be beneficial, particularly for knee osteoarthritis, it's unclear whether restoring those vitamin D levels will actually improve those things. Now, for rheumatoid arthritis, vitamin D deficiency actually seems to be one of the most common nutritional deficiencies we see in people and could be worthwhile correcting. Not only is it good for bone health, but it really has a powerful effect on the immune system. It helps immune cells function correctly. It helps with inflammatory responses, and may have an ability to suppress production of pro-inflammatory markers in the body. And so there is a relationship here. There's a couple of studies to suggest they found that as vitamin D levels drop, RA disease activity tends to increase. And you would know that if you have a rheumatoid arthritis, there's ebbs and flows in disease activity and ebbs and flows in your symptoms. But here, this is where they suggest that those with really low vitamin D levels, they do often experience more severe disease, greater disability, and lower quality of life. So that maybe keeping those vitamin D levels in check, it could be really beneficial for keeping on top of that rheumatoid arthritis and managing it. So although the potential role of vitamin D in preventing the development of slowing or reducing the progression of osteoarthritis and attenuating disease activity, rheumatoid arthritis is under investigation. At this point, there's really no compelling reason to actually supplement your diet with vitamin D just for slowing down the progression of osteoarthritis or managing rheumatoid arthritis, but getting adequate vitamin D through things like sun exposure, getting it through the diet, making sure you're supplementing if you're vitamin D deficient, are going to be important for overall well-being, bone health, osteoporosis prevention, and healthy immune system function. So you can't go wrong with correcting those vitamin D levels. So bottom line, we want to make sure we're getting plenty of sunshine, plenty of vitamin D rich foods. If you haven't, get those vitamin D levels checked. You can do that easily through a blood test, and you would have to ask your doctor to do that. It might or might not help your arthritis, but it will definitely help your bones. So who's heard of the Mediterranean diet? Has anyone tried it for themselves? Anyone an advocate themselves?
Yes, and it's supposed to be the best diet.
Okay, let's look at it.
all the time.
So there's a lot of different iterations of different diets, but it's really not about dismissing potential benefits or drawbacks from specific foods for fighting inflammation, but it's really a lot better to focus on the whole diet, your whole lifestyle, rather than just trying to hack your way into it. We know turmeric, we love our turmeric lattes and matcha green teas for inflammation, but I mean, we don't want to just jump to those and think job is done. This is why in the context of arthritis, Mediterranean diet specifically has got a lot of attention. So a Mediterranean diet is really a well-rounded diet that emphasizes on not just the quality of foods, but foods that are rich in all your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants, that are associated with reducing inflammation, promoting a healthy weight, and providing all those nutrients that are going to be great for your joint health. So it's one of the most comprehensively studied diets that isn't just supported by observational studies, but different randomized controlled trials, and known for its role in being able to prevent disease like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and helping maintain that healthy weight. I'm not going to delve into too much of this today, and this is just because next week it is, there will be a webinar that focuses more on the Mediterranean diet, looks at the research, but just to cut to the chase with it, you'll see that Mediterranean diets, they are typically dominated by fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, legumes, whole grains, and adding in fish and lots of olive oil. So it focuses on enjoyment. It's very palatable, and there's a lot of good reasons behind why we all advocate for this diet. So we did talk a little bit about weight management, and again, we have a webinar coming up in the future that focuses specifically on weight loss principles and how to achieve it, why it's beneficial. But what I want to say here is that even if you're a little bit overweight or you're a lot overweight, losing just even 5% of your total body weight has proven to result in improved movement, function, inflammation, and pain. So this is where nutrition really has a powerful role. If we look at people who are successful at taking weight off, and most importantly, keeping it off, these are a few of the key strategies that seem to be fundamental in any long-term solution for weight loss and weight maintenance. So a great starting point, if you don't know where to begin, is to connect with someone, a professional, a dietitian or a nutritionist. They're equipped with knowledge and skills to help assess that body mass index, determine those realistic and appropriate goals, and help you formulate the best plan to achieve them while keeping you accountable. Another really simple strategy, so simple that it really puts to shame all that complex diet information out there. I'm sure if you've ever been on Google, you typed in what's the best diet to follow, you get a whole thousands and millions even, all this information out there that you have to sort through. But something as simple as mindfulness can be really powerful. It can be described as learning to pay attention to the present moment experience. And so applying this principle to eating can be as simple as focusing on what is currently being eaten, removing distractions, taking in the taste of food as it's eaten really slowly, and even having that method to simply recall what you've eaten recently can be a real game changer for changing those future decisions about what you're eating and how much to eat. So reducing portion sizes, the larger the serving of food, the bigger the container, the more likely it is that we're going to eat more of that food. So this is what can easily lead to passively overeating. It's known to impinge on weight gain. So eating foods from smaller bowls, plates, cups is one way of being able to actually control that. And now looking at the rest of these recommendations here, I'm sure you've heard of them all before. Increasing those nutrient-rich foods, reducing intake of discretionary foods, focusing on fiber, choosing fat sensibly. I hope after the information and research we went through tonight together, it makes you understand why there is a lot of hype around these foods and why we should be enjoying them in our diets every day. Now, different foods differ in their abilities to make us feel full, and this can be influenced by things like energy, the presence of different macronutrients like those proteins, those carbs, those fats. Usually there's a reason why with our salads, our vegetables, lean proteins, fruits, we have higher satiety, which is a lot more fullness with those foods, compared to a similar amount of high energy dense foods such as biscuits or chocolates with very little nutrients. So the more full we get from a nutrient rich meal, the less likely we are to overeat the foods with no nutritional value. So there's a lot of tips I just gave you, but if I was to cut to the core of all those things and give you just 3 simple things to walk away with tonight, if you are feeling motivated to get onto that nutrition and start working on it, start with a food diary. Just being aware of what you're eating can allow you to actually track what, when, how much you eat. It can actually be helpful for recognizing patterns of overeating if we're one to emotional eat, which can easily happen when we're in pain or we're feeling upset, we're not feeling motivated, which can be related to our condition. Something as simple as a diary or reflection can help you foster a better understanding of your dietary habits and help change those future decisions around your diet. The second thing is prioritizing balance. So a nutritionally balanced diet is one that follows Australian dietary guidelines, but could also follow the Mediterranean diet. Should really include healthy foods across all our food groups: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, lean meats, fish, olive oil. These all make for a good start to the diet. But it should be one that you also enjoy. It should be one that's palatable and something that's sustainable, something that's going to keep you nourished, bring in all those essential nutrients, but it's also going to work for you, your lifestyle, and your preferences. And so when we do go into the weight management webinar, we'll talk a little bit more about the implications of having such a restrictive, rigid diet and why they basically don't work. Hunger check-in before we snack. So overeating, constant snacking, really a side effect of not eating enough essential nutrients, the good stuff like that protein, good carbs, good fats, and eating more sugars and more saturated fats. Again, it could be an emotional or stress thing, but in order to prevent this, taking that minute, applying those mindfulness strategies or techniques before we eat can really help you adopt a more flexible and sustainable approach to weight management. So they're just 3 simple things that you can actually start doing throughout your day, and you might notice a difference. There is a lot of support out there. So has anyone heard of the Get Healthy service?
Yes, I've done it a couple of times. It's fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear you've had good experience with it. It's a government-led program. It is New South Wales based, and I'm not sure if it would apply for people in Queensland, but it's basically a phone service in New South Wales where you can get expert advice from a dietitian or nutritionist to help you achieve your goals. So pretty much it's, I believe it's 7 weeks of phone calls to help look at your diet and keep you on track. So this is the number you can call. Yep.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
They sent me all this fabulous information as well about, what to eat and how to eat and everything.
Yep.
And, I'm just checking in with you and everything. It was really brilliant. I did lose weight, but I think I put it all on again now.
And you know what? That's a very natural part of it. It happens to a lot of us. We lose weight and then we gain it. So it's really important to try to find an approach that works for you to make it sustainable. So if people haven't heard of it before and you want to get started and you're here in New South Wales, I'll look into what's available in Queensland. I'm sure there's a similar program. But give this number a call. You can jump online and read more about it. The next one is Nutrition Australia. They're a non-profit organisation. They have a lot of different resources, recipes, and healthy eating guides, which are easy to download, print out, and use every day. I myself love jumping onto that website and finding a good dinner recipe that takes you about 10 minutes to throw together, and you're getting all your good stuff in it. You can also find a local dietitian. So There is Dietitians Australia. You can find a dietitian in your area. You can ask your GP, but pretty much they'll give you the best individualized nutrition advice that's applicable to you. So just to sum up what we've covered tonight, nutrition, I hope we understand why it's important in weight management, why weight management is important for arthritis, why it's important for inflammation, how it can be effective for symptom management, and that the food choices we make do impact on our health and they do impact on our disease. So what I want to do is open up the floor. I want to ask you guys, do you have any questions for me?
Not at this stage, thanks.
Okay, I can see Atmoreland, raised hand.
My question is in the BMI formula.
Yeah.
25 kilo times M2. Is that M squared or M times 2?
M squared.
And M is the circumference of the waist, is it?
It's actually your height, so it's meters squared.
Right. Okay.
So imagine your height 1.75 times 1.75 in brackets, and that should give you your body mass index.
Thank you.
That's okay. Of course, there's lots of calculators out there that easily do it for you. So feel free to use those as well. Oh, I'm just having a look through our comments. See if anything has popped up. I'm crawling up. Just lots of positive changes that have come as a result from weight management. So it's great to hear that you guys have noticed those changes. It says that what the recommendations are, they're recommendations really for a reason. They work. Are there any studies comparing organic fruit, vegetables compared to ordinary fruit and vegetables? Bev, if I'm honest, there's no studies that actually demonstrate there's any difference. It's as long as you can get those fruits and vegetables in your diet, they're going to be beneficial than not getting them in at all, whether they're organic or not. Just be aware that the organic label does come with a price difference. And so that's why we don't discriminate against our fruit and veggies. They've all got very powerful properties that go beyond how they're grown and harvested and, sold to us, really. Jane, you've raised your hand.
But Jane is muted.
May I speak or no?
We can hear you now.
I'm sorry. I'm not Jane. I'm sorry. I'll wait.
Julie, was that you?
Yes, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm taking over everybody. I'm sorry.
Feel free to jump in. What's your question?
I just want to know, can I print off the notes, so I can keep some notes. I learn better that way.
Yeah, okay. What I will encourage you guys to do is after this webinar comes to an end, you will receive a link, and I can't remember if it comes out straight away or if it will come out tomorrow, but there will be a link to the feedback, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you about what will make your experience better, and if supplying these presentation slides will make that better for you and it helps you learn and consolidate everything we've covered, definitely pop that into the feedback, and then we can make sure we get those out to you.
Thank you. And
That's
thank
okay.
you very much. It was very enjoyable.
Thank you, Julie.
I had a question about gluten, and if there was any research about the link of gluten to osteoarthritis.
There's actually no link between gluten and osteoarthritis that I'm personally aware of. I know that for some people who have an intolerance or an allergy to gluten, that can instigate an immune response to that particular gluten, and it can result in inflammation in the body. And that's why it's not a general recommendation we say for many people, and that's because many people don't actually have that allergy or intolerance. But for some people, they do notice a difference once that gluten gets removed from the diet, but usually that's under the supervision of a professional as well. And that's the way to do it if you know, you think you could have a sensitivity, because there can be a lot of implications from eating a dietary component that you have a sensitivity or reaction to. Daryl, you've actually asked, can you recommend a good Mediterranean cookbook? Absolutely. So there's one by, I believe it's Dr. Catherine Itsiopoulos. She's a very well-established researcher in the Mediterranean diet space, and she has a great, very affordable cookbook that's available online that you can just purchase, and I'm pretty sure it's available in stores as well, but it's got a lot of different Mediterranean recipes, and she also talks a little bit about the additional benefits of Mediterranean diet as well. Any other questions for me?
Thanks, Mary. It was informative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone
Thank
for
you.
coming tonight. It was great to see you here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the webinars we have scheduled, so I hope to see some of your faces in the future webinars. If you have any other questions that come to mind, you can always contact me through InfoLine or at the health email address. So feel free to get in touch that way. So we will leave it here tonight, everyone. Again, thank you for coming. It's going to be a very great year ahead of us.
Thank you for a
Thank you.
fine
Thanks
presentation.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Everyone.
you.